Jimmy Kimmel just crossed a line most of Hollywood seems terrified to even approach, and once Prince Harry and Meghan Markle became the joke on national television, there was no pretending the public conversation had not dramatically changed. This was not a cautious little wink, not some harmless celebrity tease buried between commercials. This was open ridicule, delivered to a laughing audience, aimed directly at the stories that had dominated headlines for years. And the most explosive part? It happened after Harry's memoir Spare became the fastest-selling nonfiction book ever according to Guinness World Records. Instead of treating that achievement like a triumph, Kimmel turned the biggest revelations into comedy, transforming deeply personal material into the kind of punchline that millions could instantly understand.
Harry, whose memoir just broke the Guinness record for fastest-selling nonfiction book of all time. They're now releasing a version for kids. I don't know if you know about this. It's a twist on The Princess and the Pea. It's called The Prince and the Penis.
The 60 Minutes interview was a great chance to hear Harry and Meghan's story, in case you missed their 2-hour sit-down with Oprah or their 6-part Netflix documentary.
You see the interview last night? Oprah returned with Meghan and Harry and what will surely go down in history as the most shocking gender reveal party of all time. At least 17 million Americans watch only the Super Bowl.
Harry says, how do you explain to someone who just started dating that they have to curtsy to your own grandmother?
How do you explain that you bow to your grandmother and that you will need to curtsy?
Maybe just tell her that your grandmother is the queen.
On Jimmy Kimmel Live, the attack became impossible to miss when Kimmel unveiled the parody children's book, The Prince and the Penis. Suddenly, the intimate revelations that had generated endless headlines were being packaged as absurd late-night material. And Prince Harry was no longer controlling the conversation surrounding Spare. The conversation was controlling Prince Harry. Worse, laughter was doing something criticism alone could never do, stripping away seriousness. Once an audience laughs, can the original story ever regain the same weight?
Buckingham Palace today released a statement on behalf of the Queen that begins, "The whole family is saddened." Saddened is another word for bull. And to learn the full extent of how challenging the last few years have been for Harry and Meghan. Oh, they just found out.
But Harry's book was only the beginning. Kimmel pushed directly toward Harry himself, comparing Harry's appearance to Screech from Saved by the Bell. That comparison landed because it turned Harry from controversial royal into recognizable comic character, and suddenly the spectacle felt bigger than one memoir joke. Harry had become material. Harry had become the punchline, and the audience reaction showed exactly how comfortable mainstream entertainment had become laughing along.
By the way, they should hope that the kid looks more like Meghan than Harry. No offense, but Harry kind of looks like the guy who played Screech, may he rest.
Then came the moment that made everything far more dangerous. Kimmel went straight toward the racism controversy surrounding Harry and Meghan, highlighting the contradiction of leaving Britain for America while describing an escape from racial tensions. Whether viewers agreed with that interpretation or hated it almost became secondary, because the shocking development was that the subject itself was now being openly used for comedy. Meghan had spent years at the center of one of the most sensitive royal controversies imaginable, yet suddenly Meghan's narrative was being challenged through jokes rather than careful interviews.
Turns out it's not. Meghan Markle said that when she joined the royal family, they took away her passport, driver's license, and keys. Welcome to the royal family. Please remove your belt and get ready for a cavity search. And her husband, Harry, made a number of startling accusations. The governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, vigorously denied all of them. Just had a reflex today.
And the audience erupted. That laughter mattered because Kimmel was not quietly questioning Harry and Meghan somewhere on the margins of the internet. Kimmel was doing it before millions. Harry and Meghan had discussed these experiences publicly for years. But now the atmosphere around Harry and Meghan appeared to be changing from intense debate into mainstream satire. Harry and Meghan wanted freedom from royal duties, but the explanation surrounding that departure became almost as famous as the departure itself. Serious allegations involving institutional treatment and race-dominated interviews, creating a story that grew far beyond palace walls. Jimmy Kimmel then turned that controversy into material, and suddenly Harry and Meghan were entering territory no celebrity brand wants to enter, becoming so culturally familiar that comedians no longer need to explain the setup before delivering the punchline. And then the floodgates floodgates seemed to open. William and Kate's wedding resurfaced through the infamous frostbite revelation from Harry, another deeply personal detail that instantly became irresistible comedy. Spitting Image repeatedly mocked Harry and Meghan before becoming connected to a legal dispute surrounding its satire, after which videos disappeared and questions inevitably followed. A parody showed the couple in California claiming to be ordinary while living near Oprah and supposedly far from paparazzi. The contradiction practically wrote itself. Then Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were mocked over Netflix money, pushing the image even further away from wounded royals and toward wealthy entertainment celebrities. Jimmy Fallon then found another weak spot: Meghan's pretzel routine. Meghan took pretzels from one bag and moved them into another, presenting the little transformation as a lifestyle touch, and Fallon treated the whole thing like an unsolved scientific mystery. Meghan Markle suddenly became viral parody material again. Influencers copied the routine, exaggerated the luxury, and mocked the idea that repackaging ordinary snacks could become aspirational content. Meghan Sussex entered the jokes. Meghan Markle appeared again. Mindy became part of another parody. Then came the flower petals floating in water, the carefully arranged snacks, and the roses supposedly telling a story. Meghan was no longer being mocked only for royal grievances. Meghan's lifestyle identity itself had become comedy, and that was the truly uncomfortable shift. What began with Jimmy Kimmel laughing about Harry's memoir was spreading across television and the internet, turning everything from Oprah interviews to Netflix lifestyle moments into ammunition. The question was no longer whether one comedian had gone too far. The question was why so many comedians suddenly seemed convinced the audience was ready to laugh, and who would go even further next. Then the British comedian stepped in, and suddenly the gloves looked completely off. Wallis Simpson was dragged into the comparison, described as the divorced American woman whose relationship helped trigger an abdication crisis. Before the joke twisted Wallis Simpson into vintage Meghan, and finally the original Meghan Markle. Jimmy Carr then targeted the contradiction surrounding the image of a lifelong feminist entering royal life, joking about Meghan Markle marrying a prince and giving up a job, before moving straight toward Harry and the Invictus Games. Jimmy Carr seized on the Latin meaning of Invictus, not a victim, and contrasted that with Harry repeatedly presenting grievances publicly. Then came the scandal that refuses to disappear: Harry's Nazi costume. The joke compared the royal family to the Kardashians and Prince Harry to Kanye, turning one of the ugliest episodes from Harry's past into another brutal punchline. Simon Brodkin went somewhere even more personal, telling H that M would not be there without the royal connection. Then describing the experience of watching the Harry and Meghan Netflix documentary, expecting perspective, and instead coming away with even stronger dislike. The documentary's discussions of racism and misogyny were acknowledged as serious, but the H&M nicknames, personal grievances, security complaints, and relentless focus on themselves became targets, creating the impression that every attempt to explain the story somehow produced another round of criticism. Then Kelly Osbourne entered, and subtlety disappeared completely. Harry was branded whining, complaining, and trapped in a woe is me mentality, while the contradiction between demanding privacy and publishing intensely personal stories became another target. Kelly Osbourne then returned to the Nazi costume scandal, arguing that Harry could not simply move from that controversy into a saintly public image without people remembering the past. Saturday Night Live joined the pile on next. Snell mocked Miss Meghan Markle in Suits, joking that the program barely had an audience before turning Meghan Markle's television career into material surrounding King Charles's coronation. Snell then joked about Suits being useful for putting children to sleep. Stephen Colbert moved toward Meghan's claims of being unfamiliar with royal traditions, mocking the idea that someone could enter the world's most famous monarchy without researching it. When Meghan said she had never looked up her husband online, Stephen Colbert transformed that disbelief into a Google joke involving Princess Di, then pushed the gag toward Andrew and Epstein. Stephen Colbert had taken Meghan's own explanation and transformed it into ammunition. After royal life, even Madame Tussauds London separating the couple's wax figures created comedy. Conan O'Brien used the move as a setup, and Conan introduced Oliver, a fake employee whose disturbingly affectionate relationship with the figures pushed the joke into bizarre territory. Trevor Noah then resurfaced the Disney premiere moment where Harry appeared to pitch voice-over work for his wife directly to the CEO of Disney. Suddenly, a prince looked less like royalty and more like an entertainment industry middleman, while jokes about Meghan Markle, tiny jars of jam, Netflix contracts, and fading royal prestige piled up. Oprah interviews were mocked, including financial complaints and the explosive conversation about how dark a baby might be. Family Guy reduced the post-royal brand to millions from Netflix, an absurd ad-sponsored posts, while critics threw Spotify and American Riviera Orchard into the same argument about repeated opportunities. The mockery then became even harsher. Sam was confronted through a spare parody, Godfrey challenged the racism narrative, Montecito became part of the privacy contradiction, and the Jamie Kern-Lima interview gave critics another opening as Meg was mocked for appearing impossibly busy with wealthy person responsibilities. Canada, New York, Moto Yoga, and LA were pulled into the widening spectacle before Prince Charles became part of another brutal race joke. Then Spitting Image returned, and this was where suspicion exploded. Spitting Image savaged with Love Meghan, mocked Ariana Grande, exaggerated the crisps, flowers, and lifestyle rituals, and portrayed With Love Meghan as painfully manufactured. Ryan appeared in another joke involving Hitler and Prince Harry marrying Meghan Markle, but suddenly reports involving South Park and the worldwide privacy tour fueled speculation over why material disappeared. There was still no verified evidence that Harry and Meghan forced anything offline, yet South Park remained while Spitting Image material vanished. Spider-Man, Jack Sparrow, and Hitler became part of the final savage gag, and the mystery was left hanging. Had the comedy simply gone too far, or had Harry and Meghan become almost impossible to protect from parody?